Welcome to Kitchen Uncovered. I'm Chef Andrew Nicholson, sitting around the campfire with the family. We're going to kick it off old school, cooking with that. Welcome back to Kitchen Uncovered. I'm Chef Andrew Nicholson. Today we're out on the beach. It's a beautiful day. We're going to do an old-fashioned lobster bake. So to do that, we're going to dig a pit. You're going to need river rock and rockweed. So while the kids and I get started on digging the pit, why don't you check out how we got the rockweed. Okay, so here we are. It's a couple of days before the lobster bake. We're out here on the south shore of Prince Edward Island, and we need the rockweed to get it inside a couple of days so that it stays wet and you create a lot of steam, and we got to go out there to get it. So that's what we're doing. So in order to do the lobster bake, you're going to need some rockweed, some river rocks, and the first thing we're going to do is dig a pit.
Like something, right, Dad?
That's right, buddy. Well, good to have you on board.
So Dad, is this deep? Deep?
Yeah, that's deep enough now.
Yep.
Just going to level it out.
I just gotta get the insurance out.
We need a 6x4 pit with what we're going to cook today.
I can do that.
And about 8 inches deep. Now the next step, once you get the pit dug, is to line it with river rock. Now the reason we use river rock is because you need a good solid stone that absorbs heat. And what we're going to do is we're going to line the base of the pit with the river rock on a nice even layer, and then we're going to build a fire over that, and the fire is going to heat the river rocks up and use them as their coals. Now the river rocks are going to get to a bit of temperature of about 750 degrees, we hope. A little bit hotter probably today. So the next step is, kids, let's get going and get the river rock in the pit.
Okay, dude. Okay, Dad.
So now we've dug a pit. It's approximately 6x4. The size of the pit you're going to dig depends on how much of a lobster bake you're going to do. Ours is going to be a little bit on the large size. So once you dig your pit, which is about 8 inches deep, we're going to line it with river rock. Now the reason we line it with the river rock is because you need a good solid stone that absorbs a lot of heat. We're going to put a 4-hour burn on it, and what that's going to do is that's going to heat up the rocks, and they're going to hold the heat and act as our cooking coals. And they're going to reach a temperature of about 750 degrees or more probably today. So the next step, once we get our pit dug nice and level, is we're going to line it with the river rock. So let's get started doing that. So when you're lining your river rocks, you want to take your nice big heavy ones first, right? And you want to put them on the base around the outside. That'll hold in the heat. And then your smaller ones can start filling in the middle. And you want to make sure that the rocks are pretty much shoulder to shoulder. Watch you don't drop them on your toes, because that can get a little bit on the soft side. Now, we've got a little bit of moisture in our pit, but that's because we've dug just a little bit below the tide line. So that will disappear when the tide starts going out again. And also, as the rocks get hot, it'll dry out the sand all the way around it. So that little bit on the bottom is not going to hurt. And if it is there, it's just going to create some steam for cooking everything anyway. So it's a great way to spend a day out on the beach or at the cottage or wherever. And you can cook everything on this pit. Mussels, clams, lobsters, potatoes, corn. And the secret ingredient is the rockweed. Now the rockweed is going to create the steam on the hot rocks, and that's going to help us steam our lobsters. Okay, so we've got our pit. We've lined it evenly with river rock, so a nice even layer, big rocks on the outside. We're going to start building our fire. So you got to get the fire going in the center. Then once we get the fire rolling, you got to get it spread out over all the rocks, because the rocks have to all heat up. This approximately is going to take 4 to 4.5 hours to get real heat into the rocks, because we got to get it up to 750 degrees. Okay, so once you get the rocks in, pit dug, the rocks in, then we build our fire and we gonna hope for the best and let her rip. All right, so some nice dry wood, a little bit of newspaper to start. So once we get some flame going and some wood starting to catch, it's a little bit of nursing. So we're gonna get this going, see if we can get it settled down. We're gonna spread it out throughout the next 4.5 hours over all the rocks to get them up to temperature. And at this point, it's get the fire going, grab your cool down, grab a frosty beverage of your choice, and we'll be right back. Welcome back to Kitchen Uncovered. I'm Chef Andrew Nicholson. Today we're down at the cottage. We're doing a lobster bake on the beach. So we've got a river rock or rockweed collected. A river rock is laying in the bed of the pit with the fire going. The fire is going to take 4.5 hours for us to get the heat into the rocks that we need to use as the coals. So that's all settled down on the beach. So while that's going on, we're going to have some strawberry shortcakes for dessert. When I do strawberry shortcakes, I like to use an old recipe my mother had that was orange scented biscuits. So today we're going to do orange scented biscuits. So in order to make the biscuits, we're going to use some all-purpose flour. I've got about 7 cups here because we're making for a fairly good tribe coming over. So we're going to mix our dry ingredients together. So we've got about 7 cups of flour, a cup of sugar, a 1/4 cup of baking soda, baking powder, and we have a little bit of salt. Okay? So we're basically going to mix our baking powder, our sugar, and our salt all together as dry ingredients. Now, part of the recipe is orange scented, so we actually use fresh oranges and the orange juice from the oranges. So if you have your zest done up, you can add your zest at this point with the dry ingredients, but you can also have it all mixed up together, which we have today, and have the zest and the orange juice going in at the same time. So our dry ingredients, we're just kind of mixing them up so they're well distributed. Okay, now the next thing about making biscuits is kneading in the fat. You need to work in, so we're going to use some butter, and it takes about 1/2 pound of butter, so we're going to add a little bit at a time, nicely cubed up. Okay, we're going to work that in with our hands and our fingers. And all we're trying to do is get the fat and the flour together. It's what's called a mealy texture. Okay, and you just want to distribute the fat equally amongst the flour so that your biscuits leaven a little bit relatively smoothly. Okay, so we're just going to work this together with our hands. And you're literally just pressing the butter into the flour. And as it kind of mixes up, you'll notice this kind of becomes that mealy texture, or looks like rolled oats. Part of when you're making biscuits, when they don't rise, it's because they've been overworked. Now, you don't want to, when you're making your biscuits, it's better to do this by hand because you don't want to work the gluten in the flour. You just want to meld in the fat content. So we're just going to work it enough so that it's mixed up. You could do this in a processor of some sort, but you get a little bit more control when you get your hands into it. Okay, so a little bit, I'm just going to add a little bit more butter. Okay, we're almost there. We've got some fresh strawberries in the fridge, which we're have sliced and just a little bit of sugar on them. So that's going to be the berry part of this, and I find that the oranges just kind of give it that little extra citrus and flavor. So you can kind of see that the flour mixture is becoming a little bit mealy, and it just looks like little pebbles of marbles. Is kind of what you're looking for, and you're just, at this point, you're just feeling for solid pieces of butter so that you get it all worked in fairly evenly. Okay, so that's pretty good there. Now what we'll do is we'll make a well in the center, and we're going to add our orange juice and our orange zest. Okay, now this adds some of the liquid for your cream and to bind it up. So at this point we don't want to overwork it. We just want to fold it together, and you're just going to work the dough until it just comes together and forms a ball. Okay, now the next step to these biscuits, which makes them really good for strawberry shortcake, is using the heavy cream. So we're going to add about 2 cups. We'll just add a little bit at a time, okay, till we find out if we need it all. But up to 2 cups of heavy cream in your biscuit dough makes them really rich, right? And again, you're just working the dough so that you can get it to form a ball. You don't want to over mix or overwork it. Okay, just going to add a little bit more. I'm not quite going to add it all yet, but we might. Okay, once it becomes a ball, we're going to take it out on the cutting board here in a second. It'll just give us a little bit easier to work with. If you put it out on the board too early, it's going to become a little bit messier than it is right now. All right, so 2 full cups of cream. Okay. Take it off my fingers. Now, we're going to put it out on the board. Just because the rim of the bowl is a little bit deep, and it'll be easier to work on the wooden cutting board. Okay. Now we're just going to press it together. Folding a little bit as you go, and you don't want to work this. You want to make sure that you're not killing and flattening the fat content or the butter that's in there. You want to make sure that those layers are pretty solid. You just need to make sure that it sticks together and works. So we're not going to roll this out. We're going to scoop this with an ice cream scoop because they're kind of a drop biscuit type style. And the excess butter that's in there is going to level up, and they're going to rise, and they're going to look like a puff ball. Okay, so it should feel a little bit tacky on the outside. It shouldn't be dry mixture. It should feel a little bit tacky. And now what we're going to do, they're drop biscuits. So if you've got a good size ice cream scoop, you can do it this way. It's a little easier. If you don't have an ice cream scoop, sometimes we don't have all the tools at the cottage. We're going to just take a measuring scoop, and we're just going to portion them out. All right? And what you want to see when you're doing the biscuits is you want to see the layers of fat or the butter that we put in there in them as you're scooping them, okay? Because that butter is going to be your leavening agent that's going to make them nice and light. Creaminess and rich and very nice for the berries. Okay, they will grow a little bit. They will meld together, but they're pretty much going to stay in their shapes. Welcome back to Kitchen Uncovered. I'm Chef Andrew Nicholson. We're here on the beach today. We got a lobster bait going on. So we dug a pit, we lined it with river rocks. We've got a fire going. We lit it about 10 o'clock this morning. It's now a little after 4. Colleen's going to be home for dinner here in about an hour, so we got to get dinner going. So what we've got going on is we've burned out all the wood. The rocks are now up to 750 or higher. You can tell by holding your hand over the heat. If you can count up to 7 when you get here, then that's about how high it is. So you're going to, now what we're going to do is we've got everything ready. We've got the extra logs just around to hold in some of the heat. We're going to load it up with the rockweed. Then we're going to put our ingredients on, cover it with a tarp, and be done. Okay? So now you need the rockweed because it has little water pockets in it and creates steam. And this has been soaking in the river for the whole day so that it stays nice and fresh. And we're going to get some real steam action going here. We've had lobsters and mussels and soft shell clams in the water. We've also soaked some corn on the cob. And then we have our potatoes that we prepped up. So careful not to step in the fire, but you want to make sure that you've got a nice even layer of rockweed all over, because you don't want the lobsters or any of the food to sit directly on the rocks because it's just too hot for them to handle. So your shellfish goes on an outside edge. It needs to be in a perforated pan because out of experience we've realized that the heat just won't penetrate the solid pan. So you need to get the steam through and the heat in. Then we've got corn in the cob, which we've also soaked in the water, so it's nice and soaking. We'll just put it right on the fire right here. All right, then we have our potatoes. Potatoes we did up in the pillows. Right, they're gonna go right on here next to the corn, so we know where to find them. And then in the dead center, in the center where all the real heat is, we're gonna put our lobsters. Now our lobsters, we've taken the bands off of them so that you don't get that burnt rubber sensation in your lobster meat. And you want to make sure that there's a good layer of rockweed so that you don't, because the heat of the rocks will burn through the shell and scorch it. And you need a size pit depending on how much you're cooking so that you've got an even layer. You can't be piling it too high. It's one of those learn and live things that you learn to. So then a little extra rockweed over top just to kind of protect it for more flavor, a little more steam action. Plus it makes the hunt later after looking for them a little harder. Once you get the rockweed on, we're going to take some heavily soaked canvas, cover the top of them, put a couple eggs in the center, put another one, and we're going to let it sit and we're going to let it steam for 45 minutes. Welcome back to Kitchen Uncovered. I'm Chef Andrew Nicholson. We're just here. We got the lobster bake going on. We've got the lobster, the corn, the potatoes, the clams, and the mussels all under the tarp. We've put a wet tarp over top of it. Now the trick to this little jobby is you got to take half a dozen eggs and you put them right in the center of your pit. Rowan, you want to give me a hand?
Yes. Oops.
Just put your...
Sorry, Dad.
That's all right. Just put your eggs there. Now what happens is eggs and lobsters all take 12 minutes to cook. So by testing it, put the eggs on the top and the center. If there's enough heat evaporating in order to cook the eggs, our lobsters are cooked underneath. So you put the tarp over top of it. That's your tester, so you don't disturb the main tarp. You just kind of reach underneath and grab an egg in about 45 minutes or so to see how they're doing. So they're right in the center, right? Now Thomas is going to give us a hand. He's going to seal the edges, and we're just going to put sand around the outside of the tarp to lock in the heat, just to seal down the edges. So once that's sealed, you're going to let it steam and let it hang out for 45 minutes to an hour. Then we're looking at checking an egg and seeing what doneness we're at. The bake's been going on now. We've had the tarp over it and the eggs going on for about an hour. So we're going to check the eggs now. The reason you do the eggs between tarps is so that when you lift it up and check the hard-boiled egg, that you don't disturb everything that's going on below it. Okay, so Adriana's going to give me a hand. We're just going to roll the first one back a little bit, just like that. Okay, we're going to grab one of our eggs on the top. So the idea behind the eggs is that they cook at the same time as lobsters. If the eggs on the top are cooked, then the lobsters underneath have got enough heat and they've cooked up. So those are pretty hard-boiled eggs, eh, Adriana? Huh? So that will tell us that everything is cooked. So now we can get ready to set up the table for the buffet. All right, so we've got the eggs there. We'll take these extra couple off, and it's always good to put a half a dozen or 3 or 4 so that when you do check 1 or 2 eggs at different stages of 45 minutes to an hour, then you've got more to go on if they're not quite done or whatever. Okay, so Adriana, I'm going to get you just to grab that other corner there, sweetie. Right, and you just pull it back. And that's everything on our bake. Okay, so we've got the platters behind us. So we're going to pick the hot lobsters.
I'm not picking any.
Right off the fire, right? You can use tongs. These are a little bit warm, but you can use tongs. You just put them on a platter to get them off the rockweed. Okay, and there should be some heat there, and then you've got the potatoes and the corn. And you can see that the clams and the mussels are all opened up and all steamed nicely. So we're just going to gather up the lobster. What's that?
Don't we pull it back more?
You can pull it back on the other side if you're just careful, go around, that'd be great. We take off the potatoes, we'll unveil it, we'll put those into a bowl there just after we get upstairs. Our corn is all hot. We got to gather our corn from the pit. We left the husks on just to protect the kernels a little bit. We soaked it as well with our tarps in the salt water, so they'll have a really nice flavor. And we're going to bring all this up off the pit. We're going to bring it up into the buffet table and have the family gathered around, and then we'll have a nice summer dinner of lobster and seafood and potatoes and corn. Everybody's helping themselves. The buffet was a big success. Really long day, but well worth it in the end. Check out our website, kitchenuncovered.com. Thanks for watching. I'm Chef Andrew Nicholson from the Culinary Institute of Canada.